Leaders gather in Beijing to mark a successful decade of China's massive Belt and Road Initiative and chart the way forward. Hello, I'm Einar. This is The Heat. Representatives from more than 140 countries and 30 international organizations are participating in the third Belt and Road Forum in Beijing. China's project to connect the world has generated nearly $1 trillion in investment, established more than 3,000 cooperation projects, created 420,000 jobs, and helped nearly 40 million people out of poverty. CGTN Sen Ziyuan has more in this report.
Some of the major activities scheduled to take place on Tuesday afternoon, including the CEO Summit, what we can expect on the coming days, including a keynote speech delivered by Chinese President Xi Jinping at the opening ceremony. And more forums will be held throughout the event, including 3 high-level forums focusing on digital economy, green development, and also connectivity. We will also have 6 thematic forums focusing on people-to-people exchanges, maritime cooperation, and also regional cooperation, and 3 others. What we can expect is, for example, I was at the press conference held by the International Department of the Central Committee of CPC. Officials say the forum on people-to-people exchanges will be focusing on, for example, high-quality development, one of the major themes of this year, and also cultural exchanges and also peace development. And some of the events being held, including keynote speech and also guest speeches and also rounds of discussion. So we're expecting some of the major achievements being announced at the forums and multiple forums, and also high-level guests as well as government officials will be attending the event. So a total of 3 high-level forums and 6 thematic forums is scheduled to take place on Wednesday afternoon. We have a lot to expect from Beijing coming up in the next 2 days.
That was Sen Ziyuan reporting from Beijing. Well, there is much to talk about. Let's get to our panel. Jorge Heine served as Chile's ambassador to China. He's currently a research professor at Boston University School of Global Studies. Liang is a chair professor in economics at Willamette University. Also with us is Abdullahi Boru Halakhe. He's an Africa security and policy analyst. And Einar Tangen is a senior fellow at the Taihe Institute and the founder and chair of Asia Narratives. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. I know this, of course, is a significant anniversary for the Belt and Road Initiative. 10 years we've seen this. And right now there are something like 140 countries being represented in Beijing. It's a unique project in many, many ways. It's brought positive changes to so many countries. So what does the report card look like for you?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. The glass is half empty, the glass is half full. If you start looking at it just purely in statistics, over $19.1 trillion in increased trade over this last 10 years, a growth of over 6.4%, real changes, especially in the global south. But, you have on the other side of the coin from Washington and Europe, they say, well, it's in trouble. We don't know what's going on. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? The fact is, as the Saudi Arabian minister said on television, he said, look, let's be clear. The Belt and Road has been a lifesaver going forward at a time when no one else was prepared to do anything. So I think the Belt and Road initiative looks very bright. It has accomplished a tremendous amount. Remember that it's over this last 10 years, it's been assembling the pieces. This is like an engine. They are putting together something that is global in nature, and therefore all of these individual parts, when they do start working together, it's going to have a tremendous amount of impact. So the future looks extremely good.
And Einar, looking at some of the visitors to Beijing, the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, he is in Beijing right now, as are other world leaders. How important is Russia to the Belt and Road Initiative?
Well, extremely important. It's it's the largest country in land mass, etc. It stretches between, obviously, the Atlantic and the Pacific. So, well, not exactly, but through the northern channel. and they are a tremendous amount of resources. I mean, there was a time in U.S. Thinking, especially in Washington, that they said they did not want Russia and Europe to come together because of the combination of manufacturing prowess and also, Russia's deep resources. Today, what you have is a combination where Russia and China are working together. It's not an alliance. It is simply trade partners. They participate in the SCO. And what you have is a tremendous synergy with all of those resources coming towards China, which is resource poor. It's a very, very important, combination. But the real issue here is it's not just about these two countries. It's about what's happening in countries all over the world. And when you talk to ambassadors from other countries, especially the Global South, they're very thankful for a Belt and Road Initiative. And I asked them, so what would have happened if they hadn't done that? And they said, we have no idea. There had been really very, very little help coming. I think bringing more countries in has made it incredibly stronger. 155 countries in total participating. It's the largest trade area in the world, and it's hard to underestimate, and it's kind of odd that sometimes people try to in other places, especially U.S. and Europe.
Ambassador Jorge Heine, Latin America is heavily involved in the Belt and Road Initiative. So far, 21 countries in the region have joined the BRI. Looking very broadly, what has it done for the region?
Well, I will say this. Not only are 21 countries have been associated, signed MOUs on the BRI with China, 8 Latin American countries are also members of the Asian Investment and Infrastructure Bank. So there's been a very positive response in Latin America. In many ways, sort of exhibit A of that today is the Port of Chancay in Peru, a $3.6 billion project that may well become South America's gateway to Asia. It will be inaugurated next year. Like that, perhaps at a somewhat smaller scale, but we have had a considerable amount of projects around the region. So the basic point here is the following. What the BRI has done is to put infrastructure and connectivity front and center as a development proposal for the Global South. That has resonated especially in Latin America, where there's a huge deficit in infrastructure, up to $150 billion a year, according to the Inter-American Development Bank. And therefore, many countries in the region see this as a great opportunity. Could there more resources have been allocated to it? Yes, and we hope to see more of that. But the principle that is behind the BRI has really resonated in Latin America.
And Ambassador, to what extent has the BRI actually contributed to the increasing trade levels that we are seeing between China and the region?
Well, look, today, for South America, China is the #1 trading partner, more so than the United States or Europe. That tells you a lot. The increase in trade that we have seen between China and Latin America in this century is extraordinary. From $10 billion in 2000 to $495 billion, $485 billion in 2021. And obviously, for that, transport and connectivity is extremely important. Ports, again, are vital. So all the contributions that can be made in that regard are significant. We need more of that, but we're moving in the right direction.
Hi, Liang. Let's look at the global impact of the BRI. According to the World Bank, the BRI has increased trade in participating countries by over 4% and increased the GDP flow of low-income countries by 3.4%. So spell it out for us. How big an impact has the BRI had on the developing world?
Yeah, good to talk to you, Anand. So as you just mentioned, those stats really speak volume to the great economic benefits of the BRI project. What it has done is really to deliver the very needed, the global sort of public goods to help to build infrastructure, to amend the infrastructure deficit faced the global south, and also help to promote, for example, strategies to cope with climate change, poverty relief, and so on and so forth. So this kinds of connectivity, both in the hard infrastructure, the ports, the railways, the highways, the roads, but also in the soft infrastructure, for example, building digital economy. So what I would say is it not only helps to promote trade and investment, but it also really helps to promote the industrial upgrading, technological transfer, and really help to improve people's lives. And in addition to these global, I think, economic impacts, what we're really seeing is it really provides also a platform for global cooperation. It's principled on collective consultations, joint contributions, and shared benefits. It really shows there is an alternative model where countries can transcend the differences and really work together and use their strengths and complement with each other and really to share their interests and share their co-development.
Abdullahi, the Belt and Road Initiative has also had a very big impact on the continent of Africa. I was looking at some figures here. I'm talking particularly about infrastructure. China has helped build more than 6,000 kilometers of railways, 6,000 kilometers of highways, and then if you add to that all the bridges that have been built, large power generation facilities that have been built as well. How has the BRI helped the country, at least the continent, transform?
No, thank you so much. I think there are a couple of things that some of my panelists have spoken about. One, I think, is the question of an alternative model for development, because a lot of the time it's very easy to see some of the data and figures, impressive as they are. We miss the fact that without Chinese coming in with BRI, for most people, for most of the African continent, they would be stuck in the straitjacket development model that is preferred by the Western countries. So that is remarkably important because it changes the paradigm of how we think about development. Secondly, you look at the level of investment that is coming into the continent now because of that. And what you have to bear in mind is the headline, large-scale infrastructure project that consists of railways, airports, and transboundaries, trans railways as well as trans, ports. Important as they are, there are other significant, advantages that comes from that. Just to give you an example, one of the legacy projects that has been accomplished under BRI is the Kenya, railway, and that connects Nairobi, which is the capital city, of course, and the coastal port of, Mombasa. That has halved the trip from 10 hours to between 5 and 6 hours. If you're a businessman, if you're somebody who's transporting cargo, that is a huge, huge benefit. The final thing that I really would want to hone in on is the fact that a lot of the time, we forget that BRI has only been in existence for only 10 years. When relations between some of these African countries and Western countries goes to 4, 5, 6 decades, and within that short period of time, you see the level and the potential. What we are seeing is just something for 10 years. Imagine if that is multiplied or done 3, 4, 5 times. I think there is tremendous amount of opportunity. There is tremendous amount of learning on both sides. But finally, I think the people who are saying BRI is not working, the people who are saying that all the Chinese investment and the level of money that is coming has declined are the same people a couple of years ago. Their main selling point was China is saddling some of these countries with debt. Now China is giving less money and they say, oh no, it's declining. So the reality is, as long as African countries and African governments are not complaining and the Chinese are not complaining, that means the third party coming in just as an interested party, I don't think it makes a dent. Thank you.
Einar, Tangen, we hear more and more often right now of the emergence of the global south. And we know that we're living in a world that is changing right now, changing very, very quickly. Countries that held a lot of power, that dictated the rules for the last 60 or 70 years, no longer have the kind of influence that they do have. What's your view on how the BRI has contributed to the advancement of developing countries and emerging economies in a different model?
Well, I think it's given them a sense that there is a different model. I mean, going to what a previous colleague just said, for years there was just this idea that if you were looking for some sort of help, you were going to put in some sort of straitjacket where the IMF, the World Bank were going to come in and tell you exactly how to run your country. It was not successful. But when you start having BRI, amazing accomplishments, it really is kind of at the basis of this kind of existential threat that the U.S. feels. They say, well, we have the best system, it should be working, any other system shouldn't be working. And the reality is that China's system is working, and the reason it works is because China is not insisting on any kind of political or ideological sides to their, trade. They're just simply saying, look, we want to trade, we want to help you. It was very, very beneficial in China to get rich, as they said, build a road. And they believe that this is something they share. There was a change in the way that the BRI was funded. Initially, it started off government to government, but that became a political hot potato every time the government changed. So now they're on a project by project feasibility basis. But it's not a situation where China can fund the world. The idea was to show that, over a period of time, you could create change and attract more dollars in. Unfortunately, what you see is a lot of, hostility coming from countries that feel that China should not succeed. But looking towards the future, I mean, there are some real important things that China is doing, which is giving a great hope. The BRICS Plus is, in my opinion, an outgrowth of BRI in the sense that it gives people economic hope, that they know that there is something that the global south can do, that they're no longer constrained to being just cheap resource pits for the wealthy. And technology is going to be key to the future. We all know that. China's approach has been saying we want to share, we want to develop technology with these countries who participate in trade with us. The U.S. is on the opposite side of the spectrum. We do not want to share any kind of technology with anybody. It's all ours. And I think this is going to be the fundamental change item as you go forward. Those who control the IP in the future will control the wealth and direction of the world going forward. And if that is limited to a few, the inequalities will continue, and so will the civil strife and unrest. If we want a world that's sustainable, we have to work towards it, and that means being willing to share the basis of wealth.
Ambassador Heine, let's look at one project. This is the project underway in Latin America. It's the construction of a megaport in Peru. It's a China-backed project. It's been dubbed South America's gateway to Asia. How much of a game changer is that going to be for China and the region?
Well, I think it is going to be pretty much a game changer. The situation in Peru, it seems to me, is quite emblematic of the one faced by many other logistics facilities in the region. The port of Callao, which has been traditionally Peru's main port, is saturated. They can't cope anymore with all they are exporting and importing from Asia, and therefore they needed a new port. And this port is being built in a joint venture with COSCO, the well-known Chinese company. It is making good progress and we're able to have the biggest ships that are up to 18,000 containers. And it really will be a game changer. It will be the biggest port on the Pacific coast of South America. It may bring in cargo from Brazil, from Paraguay, so on. So I think it's in many ways emblematic of the kind of projects that are being put on the table. And let me add something else. that has not been mentioned before. It seems to me that BRI, not just with the sort of substantive development proposals that it has put on the table, but also with the various institutions that have been involved in it, like the AIIB, like the New Development Bank, has put forth a new model of South-South cooperation, what has been called collective financial statecraft. And that is that countries in the South no longer depend exclusively on Northern institutions to get the financing they need. They can now work together with entities like the ones I've mentioned, part of the Global South, and therefore that is a very important step forward. And finally, one last point that I want to add. All the evidence that has been gathered, and the GDP, the Global Development Center here at Boston University, just released a major report on the subject, is that BRI, as opposed to the conventional financing from Western institutions, is really making a difference in economic growth. Why? Because it focuses on the hard parts of infrastructure, as opposed to financing, public administration issues. It focuses on, well, ports, bridges, railways. Those are things that, make an economy work, and they are making a difference.
Liang, when it comes to levels of investment, when it comes to job creation, how much of an impact has the Belt and Road Initiative had over the past 10 years?
Well, it's very significant. As China always propounded, these are the projects that would have the shared benefits, and these benefits means that a lot of the projects source locally. They also hire local employees. Take the Kenya Railway, for example. Over 89% of over 89% of the resources are sourced locally, and they also hire hundreds of thousands of locals to do the work. So really, this is sort of to share the kinds of benefits, to create jobs, to create value added at the local level, and treat these partner countries as equal, instead of like some of my earlier panelists talked about, that they're not coming in to simply grab resources or simply to create jobs for their own workers. So I think it's very important to understand this is win-win cooperation. And I also wanted to add that in addition to these economic benefits, a lot of these connectivities are what they call well-rounded, all-rounded. So in addition to land, sea, air connectivities, there are a lot of corporations on for example, industrial production, financial channels, as the previous panelists talked about. There are also a lot of science and technology corporations. For example, China helped to train engineers, helped to train technicians to build those technological demo centers and labs, and so on and so forth. And last but not the least, green development, I think, is the most recent sort of emphasis of the Belt and Road Initiative. So a lot of investments, for example, 30% this year of BRI investments has gone into the energy sector, and more than half, 56% of these energy investments went into solar and wind and also hydropower. So I think it's very important to understand that BRI is not only inclusive and sharing benefits, but it's also evolving. It's really catering and accommodating really the needs of these recipient countries, and also this global South, their development trajectories.
Abdullahi, something that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, that was poverty alleviation. The BRI, broadly speaking, has contributed to lifting 40 million people out of poverty. And as the project continues, what kind of benefits do you see it having in key areas like poverty alleviation, like job creation?
It will be massive. I mean, again, like I said, it's not large-scale infrastructure projects are very, very important. That those are the beating heart of what development should be. But at the same time, it's a question about the last panelist spoke about the connectivity. If you look at the mean age of most of the Africans, it is between 17 and 19, and that is a massive, massive number of people who are coming into the labor market, and they need jobs. Those jobs cannot be created if you do not invest in infrastructure that allows people to transport their goods from one point to another, transport people, marine transport. And that, I think, is where a lot of the benefit. And we're only 10 years into this. Let's just be very clear. 10 years in the grand scheme of what development can achieve is a very, very short period. Just to illustrate this, and this again, it's a knock-on effect of China and BRI and BRICS and South-to-South cooperation. Majority of students now that used to go to Western universities, majority of them are now going to China. And that training of the next generation of the human capital that would be in charge of some of these large-scale infrastructure projects, that would be in charge of some of these countries, these are the critical raw material that will be required. So in many ways, so to your point about this being a real engine for poverty reduction, real engine for job and wealth creation, this is very, very important, and we are just at the early stages of it. I think there will be a tremendous amount of learning that is going to take place, and that I think would be useful, not just for the African countries, but also for the Chinese as well.
Einar, how do you see the next stage of development for the Belt and Road Initiative? Let's say, what it's looking at in the next 10 years. Of course, it has to adapt to an evolving world, evolving demands around the world.
Well, it does, and that's why earlier I was talking about technology and how important it is that this is shared and not kept away from other countries. China has been increasingly building capacity within countries. For instance, in Africa, where they're building railways, they're also building factories that make the cars themselves, so that the cars can be serviced there. I mean, the U.S. and previous models where they would send big, shiny new equipment to Africa, South America. Unfortunately, there was nowhere to repair it, and sending it back to the U.S. was out of the question. Plus, the money was not there to do it. So China has seen this, and they realized that if you want a complete economy, you have to help them develop what is necessary to run it. Going forward, there has to be more coordination in terms of the finance. China cannot do it all by itself. So entities like the New Development Bank, it has to be expanded. When you start looking at what BRICS Plus can do with additional countries, especially the wealthy Middle Eastern countries, if they come in and they see this and they believe that it's workable, they see that this is based on the project feasibilities, then you could start to see a tremendous amount of more money going in based on the success it's had to date. And that would be a huge game changer.
Ambassador Heine, very quickly, I've only got about 30 seconds. Of course, one of the other big challenges the world faces today is climate change and all the effects that is having. Will BRI in the future have to adapt itself to combat that as well?
Absolutely. I think it is a must. And I think that one of the concerns at the beginning of BRI was that it didn't pay enough attention to, essentially green technologies and, new ways to generate energy. Now, in the last 2 years, we're seeing more of that. I'm very encouraged by the fact that in wind and solar, China is leading the way. And we hope that can be extended throughout the Global South.
Okay. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Time has caught up with us. Thank you to all of you for being with us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Arlen Naidu in Washington, D.C.